All right, everyone, thanks for tuning in to the channel. And today we're going to give you a real world review of the Taurus GX4. First, let's get our safety check out of the way. All right, so what led me to this particular firearm is I was looking for the lightest Micro 9 in the category. And there are a few that, they're all about the same weight, which is about 18.5 ounces unloaded with the magazine in, without any finger extension or grip. All right. So I narrowed it down, went down to the gun shop, and the first thing that you want to do is take all the guns that you're thinking about. All right. And just see how they feel in your hand. Forget about how they look. Everybody wants to, get wrapped up in looks, and we're going to get into that a little bit later. But basically, starting out, you want to, see how the gun feels in your hand. And there were a few to choose from. So I lined up about 4 or 5 of them and wanted to see exactly right out of the gate which ones felt the most comfortable. So that group included, of course, the GX4. It included the SIG P365. It included the Hellcat. And it included, I believe, the Ruger 9. And it also has one more that I'm forgetting. I think Mossberg has a 9mm. But there were a few of them, right? So after holding all the guns in my hand, I basically narrowed it down to about 2 or 3, which was the GX4 and the P365 9mm, and also, the Shield 2.0. So the next thing I did was I wanted to basically get a gun that I didn't have to do a lot of modifications to. Now, normally I modify all my handguns, but this particular one, I just wanted the one that had the best trigger out of the box. So let me show you what I'm talking about. Now, if you notice, here's the take up. That's the wall right there. Guys, this is the shortest take up on any stock Micro 9mm that I've seen. All right. Now, if there's one that you think is shorter than this one, like I say, stock without any modifications, then feel free to, let me know in the comments. But at the time, this was the shortest take up. Okay. Right there. Clean break. So that was the first thing. So we checked that box right away. All right. Now, the next thing I wanted was, let's look at the price point. Okay. Let's compare prices, and we start comparing the prices, because once I narrowed it down, they all felt pretty good in my hand. So we got the trigger out of the way. We got the feel out of the way. So then I had the guy that was helping me to bring the boxes or the cases that all the guns came in. So we laid all the cases out. We opened the cases up and wanted to see what the guns came with. Now, here was the selling point. I have pretty big hands. All right. So Micro 9s and micro guns, period, are a little bit, pushing it to the limit for me as far as holding one, being comfortable, shooting them at the range, that kind of thing, having the confidence in order to, carry the gun around and, have the confidence and to, pull it out and use it in a self-defense situation. So he lays all the cases, and we open up all the boxes and the cases. look inside. What I didn't know at the time was the GX4 had a couple back straps. I think it had either one or two back straps in the box, which was perfect because my thinking was I like to try all the guns out stock before I do anything to them, first. So basically, I say, well, that may come in handy because at this time, I didn't rent one before. I didn't know whether the gun was going to be comfortable in my hand while shooting it. I knew it was going to be comfortable. I knew it was comfortable while, holding it. So I said, well, if I need it, that way I can go to a larger backstrap. Now, I purchased this firearm in, I believe it was January, February of last year. And I said, well, this was the only one out of the three that had a backstrap. So I said, well, that's good to know. So then we started looking at the prices. Also wanted to look at slide length, all right, which is from here to here. So that's the slide length. And I basically wanted to have the shortest slide length just in case I wanted to appendix carry the gun. So, oh, and also there was another gun that was on the list that I had narrowed it down to, which was the Glock 43 and the 43X. Okay. And they're similar in weight and they're part of the micro 9 category. The 43X is a little bit longer as far as taller as height wise. So I looked at those as well. And it came with 2 magazines and the back straps. So I said, okay, cool. We looked at all the other guns. The triggers didn't feel as quite as nice as this one. Now there is a distinct wall. It's not like, you pull smooth all the way through. It's actually a distinct wall, and then, you pull it. So I kind of like that, it was different. On my Glocks, I like the smooth pull all the way through. But for some reason on this gun, the way the trigger feels out the box, I wasn't mad at the trigger having a wall and then the clean break. Like I say, so now things are going more in favor of me picking this gun because remember, I'm in the store and I'm actually at the counter doing all of this. So the 43 and the 43X, they came in as a close runner-up as well. At that time, I don't know if they changed anything now, but there weren't any back straps. The trigger did feel pretty good on those, typical Glock trigger. But what I noticed is on the 43 and the 43X, it seemed like the trigger pull was a little bit heavier, all right, than previous Glocks that I purchased. But, those Glocks were a little bit bigger. But yeah, so now I push the 43 and the 43X to the side. I think now I'm down to the GX4 and I want to say the Shield. Okay, the Shield had a pretty good trigger as well, stock. What led me to the GX4 over the Shield is that the Shield, it's very narrow, even more narrow than the GX4 in terms of how thick this area is, right? I got large hands, so there's a certain amount of grip that I need to have on the gun. And then also the texturing on the Shield was a little bit more aggressive than the texturing on the GX4. All right. So basically I was sitting there going back and forth, testing the triggers out at the counter and trying to figure out, which way I wanted to go. And then eventually I actually handed the gun to my cousin and I told him, hey man, try the trigger, see how the trigger is. And, he agreed, it was pretty cool. So I end up getting the GX4. So now from that point, I know I'm going to take it, and I went and I put the pinky extension on. And then also, first thing you got to do when you get a new firearm is go to the range. All right. So the next day, went to the gun range, because now I got to see, if there's any fine tuning that I need to do as far as accessories or, things of that nature. Go to the gun range. I want to say 115 grain ball ammo through the gun, maybe 50 rounds or so. Everything went well. One thing that I have to mention about this gun, the first shot and shooting the first shots, it was pleasantly surprising. The gun, for it to be such a small gun, I mean, it was extremely accurate. I'm used to shooting small firearms, large firearms. So, I got pretty good training in shooting and handling smaller firearms. Now, if you are a first-time shooter, I would say stay away from the Micro 9 category unless you go with a P365 380 or a Glock 42, because they are a bit much to deal with recoil-wise, especially if you're new to firearms and you're an inexperienced shooter, but those of us that have been shooting for a while and pretty much know the characteristics of the smaller Micro 9s, then I would say go ahead and, and go for it. Was surprised about how well the gun shot, how good it felt in my hand. Now, once I got to, I would say 25, putting 25 rounds through it downrange, I noticed that my hand here on the inside of my pinky, and I want to say, let's see. Yeah, on the inside here and here, and also, back here on my thumb was red, and it was kind of agitated, right? So I'm thinking like, okay, maybe it's just getting used to a new gun. Not so bad. But I did notice it was kind of snappy, even with the 115 grain ball rounds that I was shooting. So I was like, that's not a problem. So what I wanted to do is I shot the rest of the other 25 rounds. And then when I left the next day, my hand was, even more aggravated in those areas, right? So, of course, you guys might say, oh, well, a gunfight is not going to last that long, And you're right. Most gunfights are going to be, 3 seconds, 3 feet, the 3 rule, But you want to practice with these guns, and you want to be comfortable when you're practicing on the range. Nobody wants to leave the range and, have blisters or, their fingers chafed up, right? All right, so getting back to it. I was like, well, what could I do to the gun to make it more comfortable, right? And also, remember, I'm still trying to keep it lightweight, because I'm going to keep it fully loaded with one in the head, and I want to carry it all day, and I want the gun to remain light. So I looked up different grips, grip tape. Didn't have any experience before with any grip tape and using those on any of my firearms. I've seen a lot of guns where they look pretty cool on there, but didn't know how they actually felt. And also, I wanted to do more research on the grip tape before I just went out and bought it. So basically, I started looking up the grip tape, and, instructions, you got to heat it up, once you put it on there for it to adhere pretty good. And then also it said that the longevity of the grip tape is usually only about, 3 years or so. And then, you have to replace it, or, it may start looking a little worn, and I didn't want to go through all of that, right? So that landed me on the whole grip. Had mixed reviews, looked on the internet, also looked on YouTube, and a lot of the whole grips that I seen that were on this firearm or that they had on the internet, they didn't fit the gun right. I think the one that most people used, it had a cutout right here, and this gun is pretty flat right here. So I wanted a hole that was going to basically follow the same lines of the gun. Is it about looks? Not really, but at the same time, I wanted to fit my hand, and when my fingers wrap around, I don't want to feel anything different of like a cutout or anything like that. So I said, well, it's only about $14, $15. Let me just order one and see what's the worst thing that can happen. If it doesn't fit, then, so be it. Also, another obstacle was that I put the larger back strap on. And as I mentioned earlier, the recoil of the Micro 9s, they're pretty snappy, they're all comparable. Some may be a little bit better than the others. Like I say, this one shot, pretty flat for a Micro 9, but it still had a good bit of recoil that I wanted to, control and get more down pack for my liking, right? So basically, I left the range, had my mental notes. So I went home, I put the larger back strap on. That was the first thing I did. Then I cleaned the gun, and then, re-oiled it, right? Then that brings me back to, looking at the whole grips. So the guys that I seen on the internet that had the whole grip, they didn't have the larger back straps on the gun. So now I definitely got to figure out, which hole to order or which two hole grips to order so I can narrow it down. So I looked at all of the, I want to say subcompact 9mm that were similar in size, but that were a little bit wider in this area. All right. And I found a few, and then I just, looked up the whole grip that they had in the online store of the whole shop, right? So I ended up ordering this grip. It was a beast to get on because this size of the bottom of the grip is bigger than up top right here. So follow the instructions, got it on, and then back here, this part was sticking out. All right. So I had to trim that down. All right, through here. But once I trim that down, the gun fit perfectly in my hand. Okay. Not only is it more comfortable in this area, it is a little bit wider. It has the swells right here. It kind of bulges out a little bit, but not that much. All right. And that was the compromise that I was willing to, deal with in order to feel comfortable shooting the gun. So we solved the issue because the texturing just was a little bit too aggressive, right? So we got that situated. I still hadn't shot it with the larger back strap or with the whole grip on. So I just did both of them at the same time. And another thing that I noticed, the factory front sight is just a white sight. It's not a night sight. And I went to the website on the internet there and basically picked out this night sight. All right, and I just changed the front one. The back sight is just serrated blade sight. All right, it has the serrations in it. That's supposed to keep the glare down, just in case you shooting in bright light or anything of that nature. And a lot of these newer Micro 9s, they're coming with blacked out rear sights. And then they just have either a white sight on the front, or they'll give you a night sight. And then some of them, the manufacturer gives you a night sight front and rear. All right, so it just depends on which model that you go with. And I figured I could change the sights if I ever wanted to change the sights. But the most important thing was the comfortability of the gun, just naturally and at the range, because you're going to spend more time, or you should spend more time at the range practicing with the gun. So if you ever get in a self-defense situation, or a situation where you need to use a firearm, you'll be 100% confident in that particular firearm. And the only way to be confident in it is the gun has to be some level of comfortable to you. It should be comfortable enough for you to, have the confidence in it to use that firearm without a doubt, without any hesitation in your mind, in case you need to use the gun, right? The gun stock, it's smooth right here. All right, this particular gun, the GX4, doesn't have any built-in finger groove. Now, the good thing about the grip is the whole grip here has a finger groove here. The actual finger groove helps you to keep the gun down, especially if you get into the heavier grain bullets. So if you start going with a heavier weight, 124, and anything higher than that, you definitely will notice it, which I wouldn't recommend, because the slides are so short in these micro nines. You want to be accountable for every bullet that you would have to shoot out of this gun. And if you can't control the gun, or if you can barely control the gun, then you definitely want to stay away from the heavier weight bullets. All right. So with that being said, that's what actually led me to setting this particular gun up like this. Since then, they've come out with a few more accessories for the GX4. This one was perfect for me, and haven't had any failures. No failure to feeds, no failure to eject, none of that. And everything that I actually did to the gun, which is only, two things: the whole grip and the front night sight, and just, put in the factory supplied pinky extender on, was perfect. And basically, you guys should look at, when you're buying a particular firearm, yeah, we want it to look good, right? But don't worry about the looks so much. Worry about how it feels in your hand without you even shooting it. You want it to be as comfortable as possible, because you got to be accountable for every bullet. And that's what actually led me to setting this gun up the way I did. I may do a few more things down the line. I may go ahead and change out the rear sight, or I may change both sights and switch it up and do different colors. But not sure yet. But the way it stands, the gun is, I was very surprised. I was very surprised by it.